Let's start with you all introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm RYLEE. I'm a first-year master's student at Michigan State. In rhetoric and writing, my concentration is composition studies and writing pedagogy, and that's what I study.
So I'm KEATON, and I'm a PhD student here in the rhetoric and writing program. And I really study language and literacy as it relates to pedagogy.
So my name is VOSS, and I'm also a master's student at Michigan State University. My concentration, like RYLEE, is also composition studies and writing pedagogy.
What would you say about your experiences with using AI, either in your own writing or teaching? KEATON?
Yeah, so right now I'm working with the first year writing program, and I'm doing some administrative work, so I'm not in the classroom right now. But for that position, I find it hard to use AI in my own writing because I feel like it takes some of my expression away. And I like to some extent, to control what I'm saying, and I see my writing as an extension of myself. So I try not to use it for my writing and for like the agendas that I put together or most of the work that I do. But one thing or one area where I do use it is I've recently made a website for resources that educators share. And I have some coding literacy, but not enough. And I also don't have enough time to really learn or dedicate myself to coding. So I've used AI to help me generate that code. And so I'm still contributing the content to it, and I'm still curating things and figuring out how I want to organize them. But AI has been really helpful in actually writing the code and troubleshooting as I develop the code.
RYLEE?
Yeah, I've never used AI before I came to Michigan State, and we did some stuff with it during first year writing orientation. That was really like the first time I used it. I don't like to use it for my own writing, like KEATON was saying. I feel like the way I write is very much my voice. And when you use AI, that voice is kind of, gone in a sense. And so I don't really use it personally, but in my teaching, I use it a fair amount. Like I use Canva to make my slide decks and things for class. And there's a feature on there to you can type in something you want to put on the slide, and then AI will do it for you. And so I use it for that sometimes. And I also use it for examples for my students. If I'm one time we edited a paragraph together and I made AI write it because I didn't want to write it myself. So, so I've used it for things like that, mostly in my teaching. But personally, I have fun with it and will play with it, but I won't really use it for my own personal writing or studies. But I think it is a good teaching tool for me.
KEATON?
So this semester, I'm also in an administrative role, so I'm no longer teaching. But last spring semester, for example, in my first year writing class, I really tried to articulate to my students what AI is. And in exchange, they also were trying to educate me, because a lot of them were computer science students, which I thought was a really exciting opportunity there. And so we tried to incorporate it in a lot of different ways, really experimenting with how it can be incorporated into the projects within our first year writing course, the curriculum that we have. And so I relied on illustration generators to help my students think about how they're telling their narrative, for example. Because, one thing that stood out the most was having a student take a section where they're writing about their kindergarten classroom, and the AI generator had created a black and white image. And their initial response was, oh, wow, this looks a little kind of creepy. And I don't remember my classroom looking like this. It's bright and colorful. And so in their revised draft, they went in and they really worked on adding that descriptive language to change the way that a potential audience would really kind of create this mental image of what they're trying to convey. And so in that way, I thought that was a really impactful opportunity and a really impactful lesson for that student and all of my other students as well. We've also tried messing around with how it works in the peer response process. Of course, always going to be an advocate for in-person peer response and getting the chance to actually have conversations with your peers. Because I think that is the heart, I think, of first year writing and just the heart of writing in general. But I think it can also really support students as they're kind of thinking through and making those decisions themselves, particularly when they're working on it maybe from afar or without any other peer near them within, I don't know, their dorms or something like that. So it's been a process, and I think it's a lot of fun to get to see how everyone is integrating it in so many different ways. And I'm really excited to get to teach again so I can continue to mess around with it. Otherwise, I would say personally, I haven't really used it, like Keaton and RYLEE have mentioned, within my own writing for the exact same reason. I don't know, it sometimes feels wrong to want to rely on it, and so I just feel more comfortable being able to say what I want to say the way that I'm going to say it.
Where do you think some of the fears related to AI stems from?
I think that they come from like where most fears come from in society, where it's just like it's the unfamiliar thing of AI. A lot of people don't know how to use it like in the way that it's becoming now. I mean, people have used like Siri and things like that, but ChatGPT and the things that are bigger now than they used to be are more unknown, and people don't really know how they work. And so I think that just like this new thing that is unfamiliar to us is gonna be scary, which like I understand in a sense, but that's when you have to take the time to like get to know it and like do research and understand like why people are using it and why it's beneficial, and also how to use it correctly so that it doesn't like become something that you fear. So I think it's just like not really understanding it. And people just not really taking the time to understand it. But I mean, once you play around with it and once you know more about it, it's not really scary. It's just like a tool like I've used in my classroom.
I wholeheartedly agree with RYLEE. I think it is that fear of the unknown. And I think because we're in a space where things aren't particularly clear right now, it's making people sort of think of the worst case scenario. And I know that that has to do with job security and a lot of other aspects of the institution, like academic integrity comes up in a lot of different ways, the ethics of using a lot of these things, and really the background, where they're coming from, how they're being designed, how they're being used. All of those issues are, of course, very valid. And I think right now, because it's so new and there really aren't policy statements, there aren't really anything that's going to, at least in this very moment, stand out as this is the exact way that we need to handle this. So I think that is definitely what it is. And I think that'll take time. And within that time, opportunities to experiment, for sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with both RYLEE and Ethan. And I think it's really just uncertainty about how AI works and about what its future is. So trying to understand, like, I think naturally we're trying to imagine what it's going to look like in 5 or 10 years and how it's going to affect higher education and what we do. So it's something that I think we could have predicted happening at some point, but it happening so quickly, and it working so well already, I think that creates more uncertainty and just some discomfort about like where this can go and how it might end up.
So RYLEE, you've been teaching at the first year writing program. How can AI complement the process of learning for students, in your opinion?
Yeah, I started the semester by introducing AI and like how it can be used as a tool rather than like something to avoid, because I feel like when you don't talk about it, students are going to want to figure it out on their own and then use it in ways that like I wouldn't necessarily recommend. So like if I introduce it and say, here are the ways you can use it and here are the ways that you should use it if you want to, then they're more inclined to do it in the way that like I can sort of control. So that was helpful. And also, like, I think since then, not a lot of them have like really used AI. And if they have, they've like put it in the reflections for their assignments. So like they have disclosed that they used it, which I asked them to do in the beginning. So I appreciate that. But I think that it complements learning in that, like, I encourage my students to work smarter, not harder. And like, if there are things that AI can do quicker than you and it's really not that big of a deal, like, why not use it? So like, I think the way I portray that to them is by doing it myself and then disclosing that. So like when like I said, I used it as to make a paragraph for us to edit. I was like, this is written by AI, not me. And it wrote it in 2 seconds, whereas I would have had to write it and probably, I don't know, I would have overthought it. So it would have taken a long time. And so like, I think that using it in that way where you can use AI to do things that aren't as high stakes and you need to be done quickly so that you have more attention and focus on things that, like writing your projects or your reflections, that I actually want like human people to write rather than AI. I think being able to use it in that way is really beneficial because it takes like a lot of the energy off of doing the smaller assignments that don't really matter if it was written by you or not, or created by you or not. You can take that energy and put it more into what I actually want to hear from you. And so, yeah, I think that that's been really beneficial in my classroom, and I plan to do more of it next semester, because I kind of talked about AI in the beginning and have like used it throughout, but I think I want to play around with it more in the beginning. So yeah, I think it's great. And my students loved when I talked about it. And I think they liked how I wasn't like, don't use AI, because then they would use it and then we would run into problems. So, but it's worked well.
Thank you. So I will also extend this question to Keaton and Ethan as well. What do you two think?
I think the key word here is complement. Instead of taking over or doing the work for you, or kind of replacing altogether a lot of the that we're doing in a classroom space. And from my perspective as a writing instructor, I think AI can complement the work that we do in so many different ways. I mean, as I mentioned, like the descriptive writing aspect of things, helping them with brainstorming, I think was really useful. And as part of the larger process of feedback, again, not replacing any instructor feedback or peer feedback, but just an additional tool or resource that can help you provide more information. And I've kind of noticed that it's not really what you say, it's how you ask it. And so if you're working with your students to kind of develop a literacy of here's how you get the answer that you want or the answer that you're looking for, I think was a really impactful place to start. Because yeah, of course, if you're just saying, please do this, it'll do it for you, of course. But if you're asking what are the steps involved, how are you coming to this conclusion? It can offer some pretty interesting feedback, I think, when you add writing. And I also just love the conversations that you can have when you do have it write a paper for you or have it write a paragraph. And the students are so quick to point out all of the things that stick out to them. And they're so quick to say things along the lines of like, I mean, the tone always comes up right away. And so I think as a tool in that way for these larger conversations of what is the point? Like, why do we write and communicate in the first place? And what is actually the goal here? What are we trying to do? And so I think, again, in that way, I think it can complement the overall learning process and writing process in general.
Yeah. I think it can definitely help in sort of brainstorming and also in the earlier stages of the writing process. For like, you can prompt it to give you some ideas for what to write about, or how to get started, the structure of different kinds of essays. Like, you can ask it about genres. So I think, again, like using it as a tool that can help you to brainstorm and think, and even revise later in the process too, I think could be really helpful to students. But it needs to be talked about for that to kind of happen. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of used in secret, which I don't think is a good thing to do. So yeah, I think having it a part of pedagogy, asking questions and inquiring into it about how it affects writing and what students think about it as a tool or as even an obstacle, I think is really useful.
So my next question is, in your opinion, how are AI and humans influencing each other at this point?
Humans are influencing AI. I think that like the development of, I think what Ethan said earlier was a really good point about getting more specific with instructions for AI and how to do things specifically. I think over time is influencing AI and helping it learn more about like the nuances of humanity. And whenever it, you know, spits out a paragraph or something, it is going to do it differently depending on how you instruct it to. And then over time, it might not even need that instruction because it's learned at this point. So I think like the nuances of humanity that they bring to AI helps AI learn and helps it do its job better. And also like humans created AI, so they're going to influence it as well. The other way around, I think that AI as a tool is really influential for students, especially like Keaton and Ethan were both saying, like it brings up those conversations of why are we doing this in the first place, and like why can we as humans do these things better than AI can do them, and like having those conversations and conversations that probably weren't even thought of before AI was around. And so I think just like having those new conversations and talking about like the importance of humans and like our nuances, is really important. And I think a lot of fun to talk about. And so I think that those influences are really cool to see. And yeah, I think it just helps humans think differently than we did before. And see the importance in our own thoughts outside of like what a robot can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that AI is affecting how we think about writing and the purposes of writing. I also think, and this is something that I've been considering more and more lately, is like the standard output of something like ChatGPT or AI. Is typically like standard American English or white mainstream English. And I think that has implications for what sort of standard or, standard or objective writing is. And I worry that that will benefit white people more than it benefits other people who practice different linguistic varieties. So yeah, I'm worried about that sort of implication. I think it's helpful to think about writing and it's helpful to inquire into what AI can do for writing, but I also worry that it is more or less seeming like a white technology at this point.
I think, of course, humans are absolutely influencing AI, and of course, vice versa. I think as we continue to use it, all of the things that have been input and what we continue to input is, of course, just going to make it smarter or be able to do things different. And I think as part of that, there are a lot of concerns that emerge, for sure. And I think exactly what you were saying, Keaton, like one of the largest concerns. I think it also, too, as with a lot of digital technologies and the way that it's then kind of influencing us, is I think it, in a lot of ways, makes us have to think a little more critically about efficiency, I think, and what it means to be efficient, what we're losing out on when we're trying to be that efficient. Because it seems to be that, I mean, at least when I think about it and the way that we use it and the way that I've seen students use it, it seems to have to do with something along those lines. And so I think that I I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways that really asks us to slow down a little bit and kind of start really asking these critical questions.
So how can we harness AI in a way that does not harm us or students?
We just need to talk about it more, and treat it not as something that is taboo or can't be talked about, because like when you have these conversations with students and are open about how you use AI and how other people use AI and how like it can be used in the classroom, it's going to allow them to use it in ways that is more controlled and also beneficial to them rather than harmful to them. So if they are just going to go and use it because they heard about it from their friend and you or their instructors have not talked about it, they might put in very general, prompts for it to spit out. And then it is not really beneficial to them to use that in that way. And so I think like for instructors, I think it's our job to learn more about AI and to be able to teach our students how it can be learned, because, they don't know all the time how to use it, especially coming from like high school. I can only assume that it's not talked about as much in high school as it is here. And so treating it not as a like barrier in education, but rather as a bridge to everything else. I don't know. But I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, I think just talking about it and showing them how it is beneficial rather than something that you would use in order to cheat or like do something in a way that is more efficient but less effective. And so, yeah, I think it's our job as instructors to learn the benefits of it and to learn how to use it in a non-harmful way and then transfer that onto our students.
Yeah, I think we really need to be intentional, and we need to think about the purpose of what it is we're doing within our classroom spaces, within the broader institutional context. What is the point of having a student do the projects that we're having them do within our writing classes? So if we're really emphasizing that purpose and trying to articulate to them how this is useful to them and their learning, and therefore the way that they transfer their skills into future contexts, I think that is something that is really important for us moving forward. Because if we simply do rely on tools, we're going to miss out on developing some of those skills and developing. I mean, the whole point of college is coming to learn and see new things and explore, really. And so I don't want to close off any of those possibilities for students. So again, I'm just emphasizing the intentionality of what it is we're doing, I think.
Yeah, I think like Rylee and Ethan were talking about, there is a lot of possibility. And we know that AI isn't going away. And so it's important to talk about it, to speak about what it does to writing, how it affects our purposes of writing, and also how it might be a tool, and even the context in which we might not use AI and what that means about how we're communicating or what we're trying to say. Yeah, but it is a big question about like, can we as teachers, especially in higher education, can we ensure that AI doesn't harm students, doesn't harm people at a more global level? And I don't know if we can. Like, we can talk to our students about it. We can learn more about it ourselves, but like, we can't regulate its possibilities, and we can't really define or predict how it's going to be used. So yeah, there's a lot of possibility, not always good possibility though. So it's really difficult. And I think the more that we use it and the more that we encourage it to be used could also contribute to those less good possibilities too, because we are endorsing it and we are making it more integral to writing. but I don't think we can avoid that. So it's always going to be important to talk about it, but yeah, trying to figure out how we can harness it for good and how we can contribute to the better possibilities of it.
Well, KEATON, Ethan, and RYLEE, thank you very much for sharing your expertise on this very important emerging field. I do hope the academia will find it helpful and fruitful for our ongoing discourse.